Chapter 1, Whispers of Raventhorn. They say Raventhorn University only accepts the gifted, but they never say what kind of gift they mean. Unknown, scrawled on a dorm wall. The rain hadn't stopped in hours. Fat drops lashed the windows of the train like it was trying to peel the glass from the metal. Seraphina Elaris sat curled in the corner of the carriage, her fingers curled around the spine of a book she hadn't opened in 20 minutes. She'd been watching the trees instead. Dead black silhouettes clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. The mist outside thickened with every mile, choking the light and making it impossible to tell if it was morning or afternoon. She felt like she was being swallowed whole. Welcome to Raventhorn. It wasn't just a university, it was a myth in itself. Tucked deep in the northern hills of Ailbridge, surrounded by old forests and older folklore, an elite institution, never advertised, always whispered about. She hadn't even applied. The letter had simply arrived on her birthday, a sleek black envelope, her full name written in ink that shimmered faintly red when the light hit it just right. Now here she was, alone, seated on a train she hadn't meant to board, en route to a school she'd never heard of before this month. And yet, somehow, it felt like she was meant to be here. She shook herself, blinking down at the cover of the book in her hands. Myths of the Veil, Creatures Beyond the Threshold. It had been her mother's, the only thing she'd taken with her when the house was cleared out after the fire. Her breath caught. Not now. The train gave a slow groan as it pulled into the station. She hadn't realized they'd arrived until she saw the sign through the fog. Raventhorn University, founded 1216. The platform was nearly deserted, except for a single dark figure in a long coat holding a black umbrella. The man didn't move as the train stopped. He just stood there, statuesque, watching. Seraphina gathered her coat tighter and stepped off the train into the storm. The moment her boot touched the stone platform, a shiver ran up her spine, so sharp it made her catch her breath. Something shifted, like she'd crossed into another world entirely. "Miss Vale?" The voice was deep, polished, and cold enough to cut glass. She turned. The man was tall, impossibly so, with sleek black hair tied at the nape, sharply angular features, and eyes the color of silver smoke. He looked not young, exactly, but timeless. Yes, she said, the word catching in her throat. He didn't offer a smile, merely inclined his head once. "I'm Professor Vaylor. Welcome to Raventhorn." The car ride to campus was silent. The sleek black vehicle glided like a ghost along the narrow, winding road. The windows were tinted, and the leather inside smelled like cedar and something older, darker. Seraphina stole a glance at the man beside her. Professor Lucien Virell. She knew the name already. Every student did. He was infamous, taught Gothic literature and ancient mythos, but it wasn't his academic reputation that made his name swirl through the halls in whispers. It was the rumors. That he never aged, that he never smiled, that he once made a student disappear, that if you got too close to him, you dreamed of fire. "Have you read the Crimson Scripture?" he asked suddenly, voice smooth and quiet. The question jolted her from her thoughts. I've heard of it," she replied. "It's out of print, isn't it?" A pause. Curious. "It's not commonly known to undergraduates." "I read a lot," she said, then added, "My mother was obsessed with ancient texts. She thought vampires were real." He didn't laugh. He just turned those storm-colored eyes on her, and for one long, dizzying second, she couldn't breathe. "There's truth in every myth," he murmured. Raventhorn University appeared like a cathedral from the mist. All Gothic arches, towering spires, and dark ivy-covered stone. The iron gates creaked open as they drove through. Beyond them, the campus was a winding collection of ancient halls and lantern-lit paths, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and roses. "You'll be staying in Elmsworth Hall," Lucien said as the car rolled to a stop in front of a towering dormitory. "Classes begin tomorrow. My course, Gothic Myth and Literature, meets Monday and Wednesday evenings. Room 404. Do not be late, I won't." He looked at her a moment longer. "Then be cautious, Miss Vale. Raventhorn is not a place for the careless." And just like that, he was gone. The car disappeared down the drive, swallowed by fog. That night her dorm room was simple. Bed, desk, window. A mirror above the sink that seemed to warp slightly around the edges. She unpacked slowly, setting her mother's book on the desk, then sat cross-legged on the bed and stared at the ceiling. She wasn't sure when she fell asleep, but when she did, She dreamed of blood-red skies and tall black trees, of silver eyes in the dark, of lips brushing her throat and a voice whispering her name like a promise. Seraphina. She woke gasping, her hand at her neck, her pulse thundering. There was no one there, but outside her window, high on the hill beyond the chapel spire, she saw a figure standing perfectly still, watching. She blinked once. Gone. Chapter 2. The Man Who Walked Through Shadows. All myths are born from memory, and memory is merely truth that refuses to die. Professor Lucien Virell. Lecture 1. The bells of Raventhorn tolled in deep, guttural chimes that seemed to echo from under the earth rather than from the tower. Seraphina sat at the edge of her dormitory bed, staring at the schedule in her hands. Her fingers tightened slightly around the paper as her eyes settled on one line. Gothic Myth and Literature, Room 404. West Spire Instructor, Professor L. Virell, Room 404. Top of the oldest tower on campus. No elevators, just ancient stairs carved from obsidian-veined stone. She'd heard whispers already. In the dining hall, in the corridors outside the Library of Ash. He's not just strict, he knows things. He doesn't tolerate lateness or mediocrity. Some say he used to be a student here, centuries ago. Don't look him in the eyes, you'll see something you're not ready for. She shoved her schedule into her satchel and wrapped herself in her coat. It was twilight already. Evening classes were always darker here, more intense. The clouds above Raventhorn didn't move the same way as they did in the rest of the world. They lingered. The west spire was cold, bitterly so. The kind of cold that seemed to seep beneath skin and settle in bones. She climbed the stairs slowly, her fingers trailing along the smooth stone banister. Every few steps, she passed carved reliefs in the walls, winged beasts, crowned wolves, strange symbols that pulsed faintly when the light hit them right. It felt less like a staircase and more like a passage into another world. By the time she reached the top, her breath was short and her skin slightly damp with mist that hadn't been there moments before. The door was black oak, carved with an elaborate sigil, a stylized V inside a sunburst. Her hand hovered just above the knob when the door opened on its own, and she was greeted by the scent of old books, dark wine, and cedar smoke. Room 404 wasn't a classroom, it was a cathedral of thought. High vaulted ceilings arched above shelves of ancient texts. Flickering gas lamps illuminated the space in warm golds and deep reds. Velvet curtains framed leaded glass windows, some still stained faintly with color from centuries of candle smoke. There were no desks, just deep curved rows of antique wooden chairs with carved armrests, arranged like a theater, and at the front, a single mahogany lectern. He was already there, standing motionless, a book open in his hands as if he'd been waiting for them for hours. Lucien Virell. Tonight, he wore a black three-piece suit with a high collar and a dark silver ring on one finger. His hair was tied back again, but a single curl had fallen loose against his sharp cheekbone. He didn't look up as the students filed in, not until Seraphina entered. His gaze lifted like a storm pulled toward a point on the horizon, and for a heartbeat, their eyes locked. The room fell into silence. "You are late." Seraphina froze. She looked at the clock. I'm early." Lucien closed the book with a snap that echoed like a judge's gavel. "In this room, my time is the only time that matters." Heat rose to her cheeks, embarrassment, and something else. He turned, pacing slowly before the rows of students now seated in tense silence. "Let us begin. The lecture begins the origins of myth," he said, "are not found in fiction. They are born from fear, from memory, from trauma so deep it carves itself into the bones of a culture." He moved like shadow and fire, slow, controlled. Seraphina watched the way his fingers brushed against the edge of the lectern, how his voice dipped low at certain syllables like he was casting a spell. Vampires, shapeshifters, gods in the skin of men. We tell ourselves they are metaphors. He paused. They are not. A rustle of unease moved through the room. Lucien stepped forward. His eyes found Seraphina again. "Miss Virell, tell me, what is the oldest written account of vampirism in human history?" Her throat tightened, but her mind was sharp, sharper than he expected. The tale of Sekhmet, ancient Egypt, the goddess who drank the blood of men. a flicker of interest in his expression. "Correct," he murmured. A pause. "But tell me, do you believe she was a myth?" She hesitated. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think some stories are too old to be lies." For the first time, a small smile ghosted across his lips. It was not kind, it was not warm, but it was something. After class, students filed out in whispers. Some shaken, some exhilarated. Lucien had disappeared into a door behind the lectern. Seraphina lingered, staring at the strange sigil carved into the wall above the lectern. It matched the one on her letter. A soft voice cut through the silence. "You see it, don't you?" She turned. A girl her age stood near the back row. Raven dark hair, honey skin, and eyes like polished bronze. "I'm Amara," she said. "First year too?" Seraphina nodded. "You mean the symbol?" Amara stepped closer. "Most don't even notice it, but if you see it, if you feel it, you're marked." "Marked?" Amara glanced at the door Lucien had disappeared through. "Just be careful, especially with..." That night Seraphina couldn't sleep. Her dreams were thick with whispers, blood-red moons and velvet-wrapped voices that echoed through ancient halls. She woke with a gasp. The window had frosted over. Her breath fogged in the cold air. She turned to the mirror above her desk and froze. Something was on her skin, right at the base of her throat, barely visible, like a brand just beneath the surface. A crescent moon wrapped in thorns, the same mark carved into the wall of room 404. Her fingers trembled as she reached up to touch it. From somewhere deep in the night wind, she thought she heard a voice, low, velvet smooth. A whisper pressed to her neck. "You've always belonged." Chapter 3. The Moon Beneath the Skin. Every legend has a name scratched out of history. Some are forgotten, others are buried alive. Professor Lucien Virell, Lecture 2. Midnight at Raventhorn, the frost didn't melt. Not even after the sun touched the towers. Seraphina had tried to scrub the mark off her skin, convinced it had to be a trick of the light, a remnant of a dream, but it remained, faint but permanent, like something beneath the skin rather than on it. By the time she descended the steps of North Wing Hall that morning, her neck was wrapped in a charcoal scarf, more for her own nerves than the cold. It was too early for lectures, but she didn't want to stay in her dorm another second. Her dreams had grown, twisted, more vivid. The tower, the mark, the velvet whisper of his voice. Lucien Virell. Every time she thought about his eyes, those storm-silver irises with pupils too sharp to be human, her skin burned, not from fear, from something worse. Curiosity. The Library of Ash sat like a cathedral in the center of campus. Its name wasn't poetic. It had literally burned once, over 150 years ago, and been rebuilt from the blackened bones of its original frame. Charred beams still ran along the vaulted ceilings. It was mostly silent, save for the occasional flutter of pages or the muffled steps of the librarians, hooded women who moved like ghosts between the stacks. Seraphina slipped inside and went straight to the restricted index terminal. She had a plan. She typed, L. Virell, Lucien, faculty records, origins, affiliations. The screen pulsed, then returned a blinking message, file classification. Level Ebon. Access denied. She frowned. Tried again. Raventhorn plus Virell, Raventhorn plus room 404, Virell plus Gothic mythology. Each query returned dead ends, cryptic citations, or blank entries. It was as if he didn't exist until this year. Except, he'd clearly been here before. Amara's warning echoed in her mind. Be careful, especially with him. She sighed and stood, stretching, and that's when she noticed something out of place. A book. It hadn't been there earlier. Black leather, bound in silver thread, no title on the spine. It was sitting on the table where she'd just searched the system. Almost as if left for her. She hesitated, then opened it. The mark of the bound. To be chosen is to be claimed. The symbol appears to those who share the bloodline of the first binding. To bear it is to be hunted, protected, and desired. She froze. Underneath the passage was a hand-drawn sigil, the exact mark on her throat. That evening, room 404 was colder than usual. Lucien stood beside the lectern, not behind it, his arms crossed and his eyes fixed on the windows. Where the last crimson light of dusk bled through the glass, he didn't turn when the students entered, didn't speak for several minutes, When he did, his voice was sharp and cutting. "Tonight we discuss ritual binding," he said, "a tradition in vampire bloodlines that predates Christianity by several millennia." He turned his head then, slowly, and looked straight at her. In some covens, to be marked meant to be claimed. It was not a choice, it was fate. Seraphina shifted in her seat. Her throat burned. There are 3 phases to a binding: recognition, submission, awakening. He moved along the rows. The first is always marked by a physical sign, sometimes a sigil, sometimes a dream, sometimes blood. Students were scribbling frantically. But Lucien wasn't teaching. He was aiming. "You don't choose the mark," he said, voice low and dark. "It chooses you." He stopped walking, right beside her row, paused. Then, his voice dipped into something only she could hear. "I warned you not to look too closely, Miss Vale." Her heart thundered. "I didn't." "But you did," he interrupted softly. "And now it's too late." After the lecture, she tried to leave quickly, but the door wouldn't open. She tugged at the handle, hard, but it didn't budge. The others had filed out, somehow, but now she was alone. The shadows in room 404 had grown longer, richer, like oil spreading through silk. Then she heard it, his voice behind her. "You've seen the book." She turned. Lucien stood on the second tier of the rows, one hand in his coat pocket, the other holding a goblet of something deep red. She hesitated. "You left it for me," a slow smile. "Would you believe me if I said I didn't?" Silence. Her voice was quiet. "What is it? This mark? What does it mean?" He descended the steps slowly, like a predator scenting the air. "It means you are not just here, Miss Vale. You are of here. This place, Raventhorn, has its own bloodlines, its own secrets. Why me?" His silver gaze met hers, full, searing, patient. "Because you're not as human as you think." The room vibrated faintly. A hum beneath the floorboards. She swallowed. "That's not funny. It's not meant to be." She backed away slightly as he approached. "You said the binding has 3 phases." "I did. Which one am I in?" Lucien paused. The air between them sparked with static tension. He took one step closer, slow, deliberate, and said, "Recognition." Her breath caught. His gaze dropped, just for a second, to the edge of her scarf, where the mark pulsed faintly beneath, and then in a voice so low it tasted like sin. "You're not ready for the second." Later that night, Seraphina stood in front of her mirror again. The mark had grown slightly more visible, like it was rising to the surface with every hour that passed. In her hand was the book she hadn't returned. She flipped to a second passage, one she hadn't noticed earlier, once marked, "The soul begins to remember." What it is, what it was, and what it desires. A gust of wind hit the window hard. And then, she heard it again, that whisper. Not in her ears, in her blood. Velvety, ancient, Lucien's voice. "Awakening is closer than you think." Chapter 4. The archives beneath truth is rarely found in the light. It waits, patient and snarling, in the dark. Journal fragment, unknown author, Raventhorn Archives. Seraphina awoke to find a letter beneath her door. No sender, no address. Just a black wax seal, the imprint of a crescent moon surrounded by ivy thorns. She hadn't told anyone about the mark, or the book, or Lucien's warning. Yet someone knew. She peeled open the envelope with trembling fingers. The letter was handwritten, the ink strange, shimmering violet like it refused to dry. "You bear the mark. You must understand what you are before he claims what he cannot control. Come to the archives. Tonight, midnight. Do not bring him." A watcher of the veiled truths, her heart pounded. There were no archives listed on the Raventhorn campus map. And yet, she remembered. Lucien had once mentioned something during his first lecture. There are levels beneath Raventhorn that were not meant to be built, only buried. By midnight, the moon was high and silver, brushing pale light across the frost-covered grounds. Seraphina pulled her coat tighter and made her way toward the north wing of the library, where the oldest records were kept, behind a gated arch rarely unlocked. The metal gate was already open. A lantern flickered to life on its own as she stepped inside. Old stone steps descended into the earth, spiraling like a throat into something ancient. The scent was rich. Old paper, incense, dust, and something metallic beneath it all. The deeper she went, the more the air changed. It was colder, denser, and charged with something alive. She arrived in a vast circular chamber filled with shelves made of stone and glass. Everything was handwritten, no digital systems here. Scrolls, leather-bound tomes, maps sealed under glass. A single figure stood at the center table, cloaked in black. She froze. "You came," the figure said, not turning. "Good. The mark won't wait long. Who are you?" "A keeper of knowledge." The figure finally turned, an older woman, pale as ivory, with eyes the color of tarnished gold. "I watched your mother walk this hall once, before she disappeared." Seraphina's mouth went dry. "My mother died in a fire." "No, child." The woman stepped closer. "She was taken, marked, as you are now." Seraphina shook her head. "That's not possible. She was human. I'm human." "Not entirely," the woman whispered, reaching out. "May I see it?" Seraphina hesitated, then unwound her scarf. The mark shimmered under the lantern light, clearer than ever. Almost glowing. It resembled an ancient rune, etched in a crescent spiral with veins like thorns. The woman inhaled softly. "It is the binding of the sable line, the rarest of the old bloodlines. There hasn't been one awakened in over 2 centuries. What does that mean?" "It means," the woman said slowly, "that Lucien Virell cannot touch you. And yet he already has." The woman opened a dusty book and laid it between them. The page held an illustration, a man with silver eyes and a woman with the same mark Seraphina bore. Beneath it a single word, Veneris. "Is that her name?" "No," the woman said. "That's the name of the curse. The binding. It means desire beyond control. A vampire who marks an unawakened Veneris is doomed to madness if the bond is not completed." Seraphina's skin prickled. "But he said there were 3 phases: recognition, submission, awakening. And once you awaken," the woman said gravely, "he will no longer be your professor. He will be your mate, your alpha." She backed away, heart thudding. "I didn't ask for this. No one ever does. And if I reject it, you can't." The woman met her gaze. "But you can delay it." "How?" The woman hesitated, then handed her a second letter, sealed in red. "Give him this," she said. "It's a ward, temporary. It will shield you from the pull." Seraphina clutched it with shaking fingers. "Why are you helping me?" "Because once," the woman said softly, "I was marked too. And I loved him." She didn't sleep, not even after she returned to her dorm. The letter pulsed like it was warm in her pocket, and her skin itched as if something inside her wanted out. By morning, her reflection had changed. Her irises had deepened in color, flecks of silver swimming near the edges, and the mark now pulsed with her heartbeat. Lucien was waiting for her in room 404, empty. Just him. He turned slowly as she entered, and the second their eyes met, the air thickened. Like gravity had shifted, he knew. "You went below," he said flatly. "You knew I would. I warned you not to. You lied to me." A long silence. His jaw tightened. His voice was sharp. "What did they tell you?" "Enough," she whispered. "About the Veneris. About the bond. About you." Lucien looked away, the shadows wrapping around him like smoke. "You weren't supposed to awaken. I haven't yet." "No," he said, voice lower now. "But I can feel it. Every second I feel it breaking through." He took a step closer, then stopped himself, his fingers clenched. Seraphina reached into her coat and pulled out the red-sealed envelope. "A ward," she said, "to stop it." His face changed, not anger, not fear. "Pain. You shouldn't use that," he said hoarsely. "If you do, I won't be able to protect you when they come." "Who?" "The ones who want the Veneris for themselves." His eyes burned. "If I'm the alpha," he said slowly, "then I'm the only one who can keep you alive." Their faces were inches apart now. The mark on her neck burned. "Then why won't you take it?" she whispered. His voice dropped, trembling. "Because if I take you now, I'll never let you go." Chapter 5. The price of the ward to bind desire is to hold back a river with thread. Raventhorn's Forbidden Lectures, Volume 2. The morning after the air in her room felt different. Heavy. It was barely past dawn, and yet light clung reluctantly to the windows, as if afraid to touch her. Seraphina sat on the edge of her bed, the envelope still in her palm. The red wax pulsed faintly with a warmth that didn't feel natural, like it had a heartbeat of its own. She hadn't slept. Her skin burned, her veins itched, and every shadow whispered his name. Lucien. She could still feel the ghost of his presence. The way his voice trembled when he warned her, the way his silver eyes watched her as if he could barely keep himself from crossing the distance between them. She shouldn't have gone to the archives. She shouldn't have seen the truth, and yet, she knew she had only begun to scratch the surface. Her mark flared again, just a spark of pain like a needle against her pulse point. She pressed her fingers to it, gritted her teeth, and finally broke the seal on the letter. Inside, a single strip of obsidian parchment, cold as ice, written in curling runes that shimmered only when she tilted it under the light. Recite the vow, bind the heat, forsake the call, break the pull. The warning from the Watcher echoed in her mind. It's only temporary. Her heart was already rebelling. But she closed her eyes, placed the parchment over her skin, and whispered the vow. By blood unshed, by truth unspoken, I bind this bond until I choose. The moment the words left her lips, the parchment vanished, absorbed into her skin. Her mark flared white-hot, and then went numb. Her knees buckled. She dropped to the floor, clutching her chest as something inside her pulled. Like a tether between her and Lucien was snapping taut, stretching too far, then muffling. Not gone, just dulled, like being underwater, hearing your own heartbeat through waves. She crawled to her bed and collapsed, gasping for air. And for the first time in days, she felt alone in her body. But that relief wouldn't last. Lucien wasn't in class. A pale woman with raven-black hair and an eerie liquid grace stood in his place at the front of the lecture hall. Professor Virell has been called away for urgent matters, she said smoothly. I will be taking over this week's sessions. Seraphina watched her closely. The substitute wore deep violet robes, far more old-fashioned than any other faculty. Her nameplate read, Professor Lucien Virell. That name wasn't on the faculty roster, and she wasn't human. Seraphina knew it the second the woman's gaze locked onto her. There was recognition. Not curiosity, not even judgment, just knowledge. As if she knew. Let's begin today's lecture on blood ancestries, Lucien said, her voice wrapping the room like silk. Specifically, the sable line. Seraphina sat up straighter, a jolt of cold racing down her spine. Lucien's mouth curled into a smile that was all teeth. The sable line is among the oldest of the blood-bound unions. Not vampire, not fae, something else. Their origins are so deeply buried, even the Blood Kings fear them. A few students laughed nervously, but Seraphina didn't, because she felt the woman's voice curl around her name. Not aloud, but in her mind. You've already begun, little Venerase. That night, Seraphina wandered. The ward had numbed the bond, yes, but it hadn't silenced her body. The absence of Lucien's presence made her ache, like a ghost limb. A missing part. She found herself walking toward the East Tower before she could stop herself. It was a part of campus no one used, closed off, covered in ivy. But she could feel him there, and then she saw him, standing at the edge of the ruined courtyard behind the tower, hair windswept, coat unbuttoned, staring into the shadows like they spoke to him. She stepped out from the darkness. His head turned slowly, and the second their eyes met, his expression changed. Fury, pain, something breaking. You used the ward, he said, voice low. I had to. No, he said, crossing the space between them fast and fluid until they stood inches apart. You chose to. It was the only way I could think clearly. Lucien exhaled hard, his jaw flexed. You don't want to think clearly, Seraphina. Not when your blood is waking. The bond is supposed to guide you. Suppressing it is like blindfolding yourself before a cliff. You want me to fall, she whispered. His hand lifted, hesitated in the air between them, shaking. No. I want to catch you. Something behind his control cracked. And then he touched her. Fingers grazing her neck just above the mark. The ward flared to life, burning cold. She winced, pulling back. Lucien hissed in pain, like he'd been scorched. His hand dropped. You've made your choice, he said, his voice torn. But you've made enemies now. The sable line hasn't been seen in centuries. They'll come for you. Who? The old courts, the Watchers, the Bloodborne. He looked down, then whispered, and maybe, even me. That night she woke to the sound of something scratching at her window. Not knocking, scratching. The dorm was 4 stories up. She approached slowly, barefoot, her heart racing. Outside the window stood a man, or something wearing the shape of one. pale white hair, skin like shadow glass, and eyes black as midnight oil. He stood on the wall, upside down like gravity meant nothing, and he smiled at her through the glass. When she gasped, he didn't speak. He simply pointed to her chest, where the mark was still glowing faintly, and licked his lips, then vanished. Not down, up. She backed away, heart thudding, and then she noticed it. The red wax envelope, the ward, was back on her desk. Unsealed, empty. And the mark on her neck was warm again. Chapter 6. The stranger's bargain power knows its own. But it always demands a price. Excerpt from the Obsidian Oaths Vol. Seraphina couldn't sleep. The stranger's black eyes haunted her. That upside-down smile, the silent lick of his lips. It hadn't been hunger in his gaze. It had been possession. He had known exactly what he was looking at. Her. The mark. The bloodline. And he hadn't been afraid. She sat in the center of her dorm floor, knees drawn up, a candle flickering before her. Her fingers trembled as she reached again for the leather-bound book she stole from the archives 2 nights before. The one bound in worn dark hide, the one with no title. She flipped through its brittle pages. There, an illustration, the sable crest, a 4-pointed star bleeding from the center, surrounded by a serpent biting its own tail. The caption below was barely legible, the lost line. The chosen vessel. The moon's hunger made flesh. A cold shiver ran up her spine. Suddenly, the candle guttered out. The room plunged into darkness. And then, a whisper, low, velvet smooth, right behind her ear. "He's not the only one who wants you, little flame." She whirled around, but no one was there. Far across campus, Lucien Thornhart was not sleeping either. He sat in his private study beneath the east tower, walls lined with old grimoires, herbs hanging to dry, symbols carved into the wood. A warded sanctuary, and yet... The bond pulsed in his veins again. The suppression had lifted. He'd felt it hours ago when the seal reappeared in her dorm. Emptied, unraveled, returned. Which meant only one thing: she didn't break it. Someone else did. He clenched his fist, veins darkening along his wrist. Not with anger, with fear. The only ones capable of unbinding such an ancient ward were old blood, older than him, older than the academy, old as the first courts. He rose, stalking toward the sealed cabinet in the back of the room. He pressed his palm to the rune-locked wood. It pulsed, hissed, and opened. Inside, beneath velvet and shadow, lay a single vial, silver blood. His, for the right. He had sworn never to use it again. But if they were coming for her, if he was coming for her, then Lucien had no choice. Seraphina didn't attend classes the next day. Her body burned from the inside like her blood was catching fire. But it wasn't illness. It was awakening. By midnight the pain had subsided, just enough for her to breathe, and that's when she felt it. A call. Not a voice, not a sound. A pull. Like someone had reached through the air and tugged the cord inside her soul. Her bare feet padded across the dormitory floor, out the side door and into the woods behind the east tower. The moon was full, bathing the trees in silver, and waiting by the stone ruins was him, the stranger, white-haired, eyes like endless ink, dressed in black robes that shimmered like oil. "Beautiful little Veneris," he said, as if greeting an old lover. "Did you enjoy my gift?" "You broke the ward," she said coldly. "I unshackled your instincts," he corrected, stepping closer. "He's trying to cage you. But you were born to be claimed. Who are you?" He smiled wider. "They call me Vorin. I'm a memory eater. A shadow court emissary. But you..." He tilted his head. "You may call me the first one who saw you." Her breath caught. "What do you want from me?" He circled her slowly, hands tucked behind his back. "Only what's owed. The sable line carries a debt, a bargain, forged long before you were born. You are the vessel. The bond is the lock. And I," he stopped behind her, voice like smoke, "am the key." She turned, shoving him back with her magic, raw, silver-white force crackling from her palm. To her shock, he stumbled. He laughed, delighted. "Oh, she burns, how delicious. You're stronger than I thought. Stay away from me." He raised his hands. "As you wish, little flame. But I'll leave you a token." He extended a single black rose, thornless, but alive. She didn't take it. He tucked it into the crook of a tree instead, winked, and vanished in a rush of shadow so cold, the air froze where he'd stood. Lucien stood in a circle of silver salt and moonroot, his shirt discarded, revealing the mark carved into his chest, an ancient brand, the Oath brand, given only to those who had once served as blood guardians of the First Court. He hadn't summoned its magic in over 100 years, but tonight he would. He bit his palm and let his blood drip into the bowl of black glass. His lips moved in an old tongue, words thick with memory. By the blood of the line, by the shadow of the vow, show me her fate. The blood hissed, rose into smoke, and formed an image in the air. Seraphina, in the woods, standing before the memory eater. Lucien's heart stopped. He hadn't seen Vorin in centuries, thought him buried in the old war, but worse, he saw something else. A second mark, glowing faintly beneath her skin. The old claim, the one her ancestors had made. She's not ready, Lucien whispered, horror dawning. And then, her eyes in the vision lifted, as if she could see him. Lucien, her voice echoed through the blood smoke. And then the image shattered. She was already at his door when he opened it, rain soaking her to the skin, hair tangled, eyes wild. You saw him, he said. She nodded. Without a word, he pulled her inside, closed the door, and locked it with 7 sigils, the kind no student ever saw. She stepped into the warmth of his firelight, breath shaking. He said there was a bargain. There was, Lucien said bitterly. 1,000 years ago, your bloodline traded something to stop a war, but no one expected you to be born, the last of the Sable Flame. What did they trade? He looked at her, truly looked, and his voice was raw when he said, You. Chapter 7, The Bargain Beneath the Moon. Some bloodlines are forged not in legacy, but in sacrifice. Lucien Thornhart, The Forbidden Lecture, year 894. The moment Lucien said those words, you, the warmth seemed to vanish from the room. Seraphina stood frozen, the crackling fire behind her casting golden light over the contours of her wet skin. Her eyes searched his face, desperate for something, reassurance, contradiction, anything that would lessen the blow. Instead, Lucien stepped back into shadow. I was afraid of this, he murmured, turning away from her. That one day the seal would weaken, that they would feel your presence. You said I was the bargain, she whispered. What does that mean? Lucien's jaw flexed. The tension in his body was inhuman, every muscle taut like a drawn bowstring. You carry the legacy of the Sable Line, Seraphina, a bloodline believed to have been extinguished after the War of Binding. But it wasn't. One bloodline remained, one last heir, and that heir, he turned to face her, his voice dropped low, was promised. She stepped back, her hand instinctively touching the faint silvery crescent on her shoulder, the mark that had begun burning again that morning. Promised to whom? Lucien's voice was like smoke curling through the cold air. To the Shadow Court, more specifically. To the memory eater who kissed your dream and touched your blood. Seraphina's throat clenched. Vorin. Lucien gave a tight nod. Your ancestor, Lady Elenara Veneris, struck a deal during the siege of Moonhall. In exchange for the Shadow Court's aid in turning the tide of war, she pledged the soul of her future descendant, the one who would carry the final spark of the flame. You are that spark, Seraphina, but why me? Why my blood? Lucien looked away, as though the truth was too dangerous to let linger in eye contact. Because your soul isn't entirely more. He moved toward the arched window, the rain streaking down like liquid sorrow. His silhouette was ghostly against the moonlight. I knew Elenara, he said, so softly it was almost a confession. I fought beside her. I loved her. Seraphina's eyes widened. She felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She was powerful, Lucien went on, and terrified of what she carried. The Sable Flame is not just magic. It's a living force, an ancient power that feeds on desire, emotion, and blood. When she bore the mark, it nearly consumed her. Is that what's happening to me? Seraphina asked, clutching the edge of a chair. He nodded once. Piece by piece, it's waking up. And you, her voice cracked, you knew this. From the beginning. I felt it the moment you stepped into my lecture hall, Lucien admitted. That mark. It called to me. Because centuries ago I bound myself to the flame. When Elenara died, I thought the bond was broken. but when I saw you I knew." She passed it on. "You carry not just the flame, but the echo of her." The words stunned her into silence. "Are you saying you were in love with my ancestor, and now I'm her?" "No." His eyes glowed faintly red. "I'm saying the flame remembers, and it chose you." For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the rain outside. Then Seraphina stepped closer. Her voice was soft, almost aching. "If you were bound to the flame, does that mean we're—" He held up a hand, stopping her. "Don't finish that question," he said, voice tight, "because if you do, I might answer it. And once that answer is spoken, it can't be taken back." She stared at him. The space between them felt magnetic, like an invisible current pulling them together. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why are you trying to protect me from all of this if it's already happening? If I am this vessel, this bargain, then what are we doing here? Why you?" Lucien stepped forward slowly, closing the space between them. His eyes searched hers with a hunger barely restrained. "Because, Seraphina," he said, his voice deep and broken, "I am not just your professor. I am the one who was supposed to bind you, before Voren ever touched you." Her heart hammered. "What?" "I was the one meant to complete the rite, to protect you, to mark you as mine. But I refused. I thought I could rewrite fate." She stepped back, breath caught in her throat. "And now?" He looked down. "Now it's too late. He's already taken part of you." "No," she said fiercely. "I didn't let him. He didn't touch me." Lucien's jaw clenched. "He doesn't need to. The bargain is spiritual. If he's invoked the claim, then the old magic is stirring, and unless it's countered—" He looked up, his eyes flashing silver. "He will own you." Seraphina paced before the fire, her hair still damp, her mind racing. "There has to be another way, some kind of reversal, a seal, a new pact." "There is," Lucien interrupted, "but you won't like it." She turned toward him. "Tell me." His throat worked. "If you let me mark you, it could override the old claim." Her heart stumbled. "You mean, like a binding?" He nodded once. "Yes, a soul bond, the ancient kind, the kind done with blood and desire." Her breath caught. "And what happens after that?" Lucien's voice dropped to something darker. "Then you'll be mine, fully, forever. And no power, not even the shadow court, can take you." The firelight danced over his face, casting half of it in shadow. She had never seen him look more dangerous, or more beautiful. Seraphina stared into the flames. "What if I don't want to belong to anyone?" she whispered. Lucien's voice was like crushed velvet. "Then you better learn to run, little flame. Because you are already claimed." Deep beneath the mountain, in a throne room carved from obsidian and bone, Voren stood before an ancient mirror. The surface rippled. A shape began to emerge. A second figure, female, with silver eyes and a hooded cloak. "She's awakening," Voren said. The woman smiled. "Then the time is near. Bring her to us. She will resist. The bond with the professor is reactivating. He's remembering." The figure sneered. "Then kill him." "But bring the girl. She must complete the rite before the next moon, or the flame will die, and with it our power." Voren bowed his head. "As the court will." Chapter 8. A Mark of Fire and Moonlight. There is a kind of kiss that doesn't touch skin at all, yet leaves you forever changed. Journal of Eleonora Veneris, year 873. Seraphina couldn't sleep. The storm had passed hours ago, but its aftermath clung to her like the memory of a nightmare. She sat curled beneath the heavy velvet blanket Lucien had wrapped around her earlier. The hearth still glowed faintly behind her, but the warmth had become secondary to the fire burning beneath her skin. Lucien had retreated to the far end of the manor hours ago, some excuse about needing to research counter-seals in the archives, but she knew the truth. He was running. From her, from the hunger in both of them that was becoming harder to deny. She rose from the armchair slowly and padded barefoot through the marble-floored hallway. Moonlight flooded the corridor like liquid silver, casting her silhouette against the stained glass windows. Her fingers trailed along the stone wall, her heart a chaotic rhythm in her chest. She didn't know where she was going, but somehow her feet already knew. The door was slightly ajar. A soft, pulsing light came from within, blue and silver, dancing like starlight on water. She hesitated, hand on the frame. "Lucien?" she whispered. He didn't answer. She stepped inside. It was nothing like the other rooms in the manor. The walls were white marble, veined with opalescent gold. A single window sat at the very top of the curved ceiling, letting moonlight flood down like a celestial spotlight. And in the center of it all, Lucien. He stood shirtless in the middle of an ancient circle etched into the floor. His back was to her, his tattoos glowing faintly under the moonlight as though alive. Runes, symbols, a coiled serpent biting its tail. They moved, shifted, like ink on water. Seraphina stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Lucien!" He turned, startled. But when his eyes met hers, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition, a surrender. He didn't speak, didn't scold her for entering. Instead, he held out a hand, and she crossed the circle. She stopped just inches from him. His chest rose and fell with slow, deliberate breaths. She could see every line of his body, his strength, his stillness, the scars that mapped his ancient past. "Tell me the truth," she whispered. "What are you really afraid of?" Lucien looked down, his voice rough. "Of wanting you, more than I should." "You think I don't feel it too?" His hand rose slowly, trembling as he brushed a loose curl from her cheek. The touch was feather-light, barely there, but Seraphina felt it like an echo through her bones. "I swore I would never claim another," he said, voice dark with old regret. "Not after Eleonora, not after what it cost. You said the flame chose me. So why fight it?" His fingers cupped her jaw, thumb brushing her lower lip. "Because once I cross that line, I won't be able to let you go." Her breath trembled against his. "Then don't." He leaned closer, his forehead brushing hers. Their breaths tangled. The silence was alive, pulsing. Her hands moved to his bare chest, feeling the rhythm of his heart. Too steady, too controlled. "I see you," she whispered. "Not the professor, not the immortal protector. You." He groaned softly, as though her words cut deeper than any blade. Their lips hovered, barely a breath apart. He could taste her air. She could feel his longing like heat under her skin. And then he pulled back. "I can't," he said, turning away, every muscle rigid with restraint. Her heart cracked. "Why?" "Because this isn't just desire, Seraphina. It's destiny. And if I take even one step down that path, it binds us. I want to be bound." He looked at her then, truly looked at her. Like she was a secret he'd waited 1,000 years to remember. "You don't know what you're saying." She took his hand and placed it over her mark, the faint crescent that had begun to glow again. "Yes, I do." That night, Seraphina dreamed again. But this time, it wasn't her dream. She saw a woman with raven-black hair and storm-colored eyes standing beneath a blood moon. Eleonora. Lucien, only younger, wilder, was kneeling before her. "You mustn't do this," he whispered. "You'll die. I'd rather die free than live as a pawn of the court." Their lips met. Desperate. Final. A kiss made of fire and tears. As they kissed, golden light exploded from their joined palms, a bond forged, a flame shared. Then, darkness, screams, blood on marble. The dream ended with Eleonora whispering, "He'll come for her one day. Protect her, or love will doom her again." Seraphina woke up in Lucien's bed, not in his arms, not because of passion, but because at some point in the night he must have carried her there. A note rested on the pillow beside her, written in sharp, elegant script. "You dreamed again. I felt it. I need to know what you saw. Meet me at the North Tower tonight. And Seraphina, don't tell anyone. L." Her fingers curled around the parchment. The bond was deepening. The flame was growing stronger. And desire was no longer the only danger between them. It was love. Chapter 9. The Kiss Beneath the Northern Stars. Some truths are only spoken when lips are too close, and hearts are no longer able to lie. Eleonora Veneris, Final Letter to the Blood Court. The Northern Tower was the oldest wing of the ancient academy, a relic from a time before peace treaties and lecture halls. It rose like a spire of forgotten memories above the stone sea of roofs below, always cloaked in frost even when the air was warm. Seraphina had never been there before. No student had, but tonight she climbed the winding steps, each one echoing louder than the last, her breath hitching with anticipation. Her fingers trailed along the cracked wall, where old runes pulsed faintly in the moonlight, wards, seals, names of protectors lost to time. At the top, an arched wooden door waited. It creaked open before she could knock. He knew she was coming. Lucien stood facing the open window. The cold night wind tousled his dark hair, and his cloak fluttered behind him like wings made of shadow. The moonlight bathed his bare neck and jaw, the sharp cut of his cheekbones catching silver like armor. He didn't turn to face her, but he spoke. "You saw Eleonora again." Seraphina stepped forward, her heartbeat wild in her throat. "Yes, she kissed me," he said, voice hollow, "and it destroyed her. She swallowed. But she kissed you knowing it would." A pause. He turned. His eyes were molten in the dark. "You're not her." "No," she whispered, stepping into the light. "But I am yours. You feel it too. This pull, this calling." Lucien's breath left him in a shudder. "I've spent lifetimes building walls," he said, "and you walked through them like they were mist. Then stop running. Let me in." He moved to her in one slow, deliberate step, so close she could feel the tension humming beneath his skin. "I haven't fed in 4 days," he said lowly. "Not from anyone. Why? Because I dream of your blood. Your taste, your touch. If I drink from anyone else, it'll mean less. If I drink from you," he swallowed, his jaw flexing, "it will mean everything." Without a word, she took his hand and pressed it to her neck. He froze. "Seraphina, I trust you," she breathed. "Whatever this is, I want to understand it. I want you." He let out a sound between a growl and a prayer, his fangs slowly descending. He didn't move for a long time, just stood there, trembling. Then, finally, he leaned in, but not to bite, to kiss. It started like a brush of wings. His lips barely touched hers, just a ghost of a kiss, almost reverent, as though he needed her permission, even now, as though he couldn't bear to take too much. But Seraphina leaned into him, and the moment she did, he broke. His mouth captured hers with aching hunger, deep and slow, a tangle of breath and desire that burned through her bones. His hand slid to her lower back, pulling her against him like gravity had finally snapped. She parted her lips. He groaned softly, tasting her, claiming her, not with fangs, but with fire. The kiss deepened. Their bodies fit together like old secrets, hands exploring tentative pathways across warm skin and moonlit cloth. Every touch, every sigh, every stolen breath was a vow unsaid. When they finally broke apart, she was dizzy, and Lucien looked undone. "I shouldn't have," he began, voice hoarse. She touched her lips. "But you did, and neither of them could pretend anymore." He pulled her close again, resting his forehead against hers. "I need to know everything you saw," he whispered. "About Eleonora, about the mark, the dreams." She nodded, but just as she opened her mouth to speak, the air changed. Cold, sharp, wrong. Lucien's head snapped up. Someone was watching them. A shadow shifted on the edge of the spire outside, not fully formed. But there, Seraphina gasped. "What was that?" He moved so fast she barely saw him blur across the room, slamming the wooden shutter shut. "We're not safe here anymore. Who was it?" "I don't know." But the mark on her skin suddenly burned, hot and insistent, and something ancient, something dark, stirred beneath it. Back in her dorm, Seraphina stared at herself in the mirror. Her lips were red and swollen. Her eyes glowed faintly with something new. Power, hunger, longing. And on her neck, a faint crescent shimmered in silver flame, not from his fangs, but from his kiss. It wasn't just passion. It was a seal, a beginning, and possibly a curse. Chapter 10, The Professor's Secret Chamber. There are truths older than blood, and they demand sacrifice. Excerpt from the Lost Codex of House Nocturne. Seraphina didn't sleep. Her body lay still in bed, but her mind, her soul, spun with the kiss, the spark, the mark. She could still feel it on her skin, that crescent moon-like shimmer, as if it were inked into her with silver fire. Lucien had kissed her like she was salvation and danger. She touched her lips. They still burned. The room smelled faintly of old books and lavender, but layered beneath it now was a scent she couldn't name, wood smoke and midnight. Him. She turned on her side, pulling the covers to her chin. There had been something watching them, a shadow beyond the spire. It had felt cold, vast, and wrong. Lucien hadn't said more, but in his eyes she'd seen fear, and something far worse, recognition. The entire academy felt off that morning. Whispers traveled down the corridor like wind through leaves, fast, breathless, half-coherent. Someone said a window in the north tower was shattered. Another swore they'd seen Lucien van Revenant storming out before dawn, his cloak torn. But no one had seen Seraphina. She'd left before the morning bell, slipping through the snow-covered grounds like a ghost. She didn't go to her first class. She went looking for him. She found the entrance by accident. It wasn't on the academy map. But there, behind the history wing, where the old stone met the roots of the frost-bitten arbor trees, she found a narrow, arched door covered in ivy and snow. It pulsed faintly when she neared it, as though it could smell her blood, as though it was waiting for her. She raised her hand, the mark on her neck flared, the door creaked open on its own. Inside was pure shadow. It was not a room, it was a domain. The walls were lined with ancient shelves, every surface crammed with scrolls, relics, and black-bound tomes that pulsed with power. Candles flickered blue instead of gold. The air smelled of ink, ash, and something metallic. In the center stood a desk carved from obsidian and bone, and behind it, Lucien. He looked up slowly, as if he'd known she would come. His eyes were darker than before, not the usual shade of velvet red, but a stormier hue, almost black. "You found it," he said quietly. "I wasn't looking." "Not really." He stood. "I've kept many things from you, Seraphina. I thought it was protection, but it's become a prison. For both of us." She swallowed. "The mark. What is it?" He walked toward her slowly, each step measured, eyes never leaving hers. "It's not just a mark," he said. "It's a bond, the first stage of a blood seal." She blinked. "A mating bond? Worse. Older." Her heart thudded. He stopped just in front of her, his voice low. "There are 3 stages. The kiss, the offering, and the binding. You kissed me. That's the first." He nodded, but I didn't offer anything. He shook his head slowly. "You did. Your trust, your invitation, the moment you asked me to stop running. You offered something far more precious than blood." The air between them thickened. Every breath they shared now felt like a tether. She looked up at him. "And the last? The binding?" His jaw tensed. "If we reach that stage, there's no going back. You will carry my mark in your soul. You will crave my blood, my presence. And I will crave yours until madness takes me." She should have been afraid. But she wasn't. She was burning. Lucien turned from her abruptly. He moved to a nearby wall and pressed a hand to the stone. A panel slid open, revealing a mirror. But not just any mirror. Its surface shimmered like mercury, reflecting not her face but flickers of distant memory. "You need to see who I was," he said. In the mirror, Seraphina saw a battlefield, bodies, blood, and Lucien, unrecognizably feral. His fangs were longer. His eyes completely black. Wings of shadow burst from his back as he tore through enemy lines like a god of death. "I led the Reaper's blood war," he said, voice hollow. "They called me the Crimson Death. I killed kings, emperors. I fed on armies. I didn't teach. I didn't love." She stared at the vision, breath caught. "I was cursed by the blood court," he continued, "to live immortal, unless the one destined for me freely chooses to bind herself, knowing all I've done." Seraphina turned from the mirror. She met his gaze head-on. "I choose," she said, quiet but sure. He blinked. "You can't. I'm not afraid of your past. I want your future. With me." He reached for her then, grabbing her face with trembling hands. His mouth hovered just above hers, eyes wide and wild. "If I kiss you again, we won't stop. I'll take more. The next step. Then take it." The second seal, his lips were on hers before the words even fully left her mouth. This kiss was nothing like the first. It was desperate, dark, and deep. His hands slid down her waist, fingers clenching her hips as if he was anchoring himself. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, pressing against the hardness of his chest. Then, his fangs brushed her lower lip. He pulled back just barely. "Let me," he whispered. She nodded. His fangs sank gently into her lip, just enough to draw blood. Their breath mingled with crimson. His pupils dilated, and for the briefest moment time folded in on itself. The chamber shook. Power surged from the ground up, wrapping around them like a cocoon of heat and magic. The offering had been accepted, but they were not alone. A loud crack echoed through the chamber. The mirror behind them shattered. Lucien pulled Seraphina behind him, eyes glowing, fangs bared. From the broken shards a figure emerged. Tall, cloaked in violet, eyes like voids. And on his throat, a brand identical to the one now glowing on Seraphina's neck, Lucien snarled. Azareth. The figure smiled. So, you've marked another. Leave her out of this. Oh, Lucien, Azareth said with a voice like velvet and venom. There is no leaving her out now. She's chosen. Which means the prophecy begins again. And this time, you won't survive. Chapter 11. The enemy of his past. The curse of her future power doesn't choose lightly. It marks the blood that can bear it. And in that mark is both ruin and redemption. Archive fragment, House Nocturne. The chamber held its breath. Seraphina could feel it, magic pooling in every crack of stone, drawn to the man named Azareth like gravity to a star. He wasn't just another vampire. He wasn't even just an enemy. He was something worse. Lucien's silence said it all. Azareth stepped fully from the shards of the mirror, violet cloak dragging behind him like oil across water. His eyes, void-like, not just black but empty, locked onto hers with cold calculation. She bears your mark, he said softly, almost curiously, but not yet the bond. You are still hesitant, still human, after all these centuries. Lucien didn't move. His hand was firm against Seraphina's waist, pressing her behind him. His jaw tightened, but his voice, when it came, was low and lethal. Take one step closer, Azareth, and I will rip your heart out a second time. Azareth smiled. Ah, still so dramatic. He slowly unclasped the collar of his cloak. Beneath it, on his chest, just above where his heart should have been, was a scar. Black, burned into the flesh in the shape of a 5-pointed star broken in the middle. Seraphina's breath hitched. Lucien had done that. To him, she stepped forward slightly, ignoring Lucien's silent warning. Who are you? Azareth turned toward her, genuinely intrigued now. She speaks. Brave little thing. You must be the one the blood scripture spoke of, the girl with the whisper song soul. The key to the second awakening. I'm not a key, Seraphina said. I'm not some prophecy. Azareth tilted his head. No, you're something worse. You're hope. And then he vanished in a cloud of violet smoke. Lucien slammed the mirror panel shut and lit 3 of the obsidian ward candles with a flick of his fingers. The smoke rose, thick with the scent of sulfur and bloodroot, forming a shield around the perimeter of the chamber. Seraphina stood beside him, silent, her pulse still racing. Who was he? She asked softly. Lucien didn't answer at first. He poured a dark liquid into a goblet and downed it in one sharp tilt of his head before he turned to face her. Azareth was my brother. The words landed like thunder. She blinked. You said, you killed him. I did. His voice dropped. But some things don't stay dead. He walked to the far wall, ran a hand across a string of carved runes. He was the firstborn of House Revenant, crowned to inherit everything. But he made a pact with something beyond our realm, something that promised him immortality in exchange for... Lucien stopped. She stepped closer. For what? He met her eyes. For your bloodline. Seraphina stilled. What do you mean? You're not entirely human, Seraphina. You never have been. Your dreams, your connection to the moon, your ability to enter the sanctum uninvited, all of it points to your true lineage. He paused, and when he spoke again, it was a whisper. You descend from the lost line of Isolde. She froze. That's not possible. My mother was a keeper, trained to hide you, protect you, but your blood can't lie. Seraphina backed away, her thoughts spinning. The mark on her neck pulsed. So what does that make me? Lucien's eyes darkened with something beyond desire, something reverent, terrified, awed. It makes you the flame of the blood moon, the one destined to either awaken the old ones or end them. The room grew colder. I can't be this person, she whispered, tears starting to gather at the corners of her eyes. I'm not ready. I don't want this. Lucien stepped forward slowly. I didn't want my fate either. I was made a killer, a cursed reaper. But you can choose. You don't have to accept the prophecy, you just have to accept me. His voice broke on the last word. The tension between them snapped tight again. This time she didn't resist. She launched herself into his arms. His hands caught her like gravity. His mouth crashed onto hers, hungry, hot, claiming. Her hands wove into his hair, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened into something primal, something anchoring. Clothes melted away in scattered layers. His mouth traced every line of her collarbone, down to the mark he'd given her. She moaned when he kissed it again, this time not gently but possessively. Her body burned, and his trembled. "I want to mark you again," he growled, lips against her skin. "Lower." She nodded, dizzy with longing. He leaned down and sank his fangs gently into her hip, just enough to draw the offering a second time. The mark blazed across her skin like silver lightning. Lucien growled as he tasted her again. "You're mine," he whispered against her thigh. "And if the prophecy dares take you from me, I'll burn the world for you." Hours later, Seraphina lay curled in his arms in the sanctum's velvet-lined alcove. Lucien ran fingers through her hair. "I need to take you to the vault soon," he said quietly. "There are relics that respond only to your blood, and answers hidden within." She looked up at him. "I'll go." He smiled faintly, brushing her lips with his thumb. "You don't know what you've just agreed to. I know you'll be there." Outside, the moon was rising, blood-red, and across the spires of the academy shadows began to gather. Whispers hissed in forgotten tongues, because the girl of prophecy had made her second offering, and the world was watching. Chapter 12. The Vault of Ancients and the Hunger Between Us. She who bears the mark will either unchain the dark or wield it. Blood Oracle Fragment, Vault Inscription. It was just before midnight when Seraphina followed Lucien into the deepest part of the academy, a place no student had ever seen, and few professors dared to whisper about. The halls down here were nothing like the gilded corridors above. They pulsed with shadow. Carved from obsidian and limestone, the narrow stairs spiraled downward so steeply Seraphina could feel the weight of the earth pressing in. Lucien moved ahead of her, one hand outstretched, summoning cold blue flame to hover above them like a will-o'-the-wisp. It cast long, dancing shadows on the walls, some of which didn't quite move in time with their bodies. "The vault is older than the academy," Lucien said, his voice low. "Built during the Second Reign, before vampire clans turned against one another. It holds relics of the old bloodlines, cursed weapons, forbidden grimoires." "And you're bringing me here because?" she asked, her breath catching, as the air grew colder, denser. Lucien stopped at a final door, an archway made entirely of bone. The runes etched into it glowed softly as Seraphina approached. He turned to face her. "Because it will recognize you, and if the vault opens to you, truly opens, then we'll have proof, not just theory or prophecy. Truth." She swallowed hard, glancing at the skeletal arch. "And if it doesn't open?" Lucien's mouth curved in a wry, humorless smile. "Then it consumes the intruder." She gave him a sharp look. "Kidding." She frowned. "Mostly." Seraphina stepped toward the arch, heart pounding. The air crackled around her, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Static licked up her arms, her spine. Her skin felt too tight for her body. The carved bone shimmered with threads of ancient power. A single needle rose from the center of the arch. She didn't wait for instructions. She extended her hand palm up and pressed it against the tip. Blood welled, dark, rich, glowing faintly gold. The runes flared, then twisted violently. The bones groaned, and then the arch screamed. Seraphina flinched as the entire hallway pulsed with a shock wave. Lucien reached out to steady her, pulling her back against his chest just as the door split open down the center with a grinding sound like stone weeping. Inside was silence. Beyond the threshold lay a vast circular chamber, smooth black stone walls lined with ancient tomes and suspended lanterns of red flame. In the center stood a pedestal of obsidian, and atop it, a mask shaped like a dragon's skull, its eye sockets filled with shimmering red crystal. Seraphina stared. The mask stared back. Lucien's voice came from behind her, quiet and reverent. "The mask of Ruavar." She felt cold all over. "What is it?" "It belonged to the first vampire king. It was said to grant visions, madness, or power." He paused. "It has never reacted to anyone since the bloodline fell." The flames on the walls shifted, drawing inward toward her. And then the mask, ancient and immovable for centuries, rose into the air and turned, to face her. In the next heartbeat, the chamber vanished. Seraphina gasped as the world around her shifted into a vast battlefield drowned in ash. Moons hung shattered in the sky, fires raged, and standing atop a spire of bone was a woman, herself, but not. Her hair was braided with silver thread. Her eyes were black as midnight, and behind her, a beast towered, a creature of smoke and fang and flame. The woman turned, met her gaze, and whispered one word, "Choose." Then, everything shattered. She collapsed to her knees in the vault. Lucien was at her side in seconds, his arms encircling her, his scent wrapping around her like a shield. "What did you see?" he asked. She didn't answer at first. She couldn't, because she could still feel it. The beast, the power, the unbearable pull between her and something old, something monstrous. Lucien's fingers tilted her chin up. "You're shaking," he whispered. "You were right," she said, voice hoarse. "I'm not just part of something. I am something." Lucien leaned closer. "And you're mine." His kiss this time wasn't gentle. It was fire. His hands roamed over her skin like he was memorizing every inch, anchoring himself to her, and she needed it, needed him, more than breath, more than thought. They sank to the cold stone floor, limbs tangled, lips frantic. The bond, still incomplete, flared with need. Each touch was a promise, each kiss, a vow. His fangs brushed her neck again, but he didn't bite, not yet. Instead, he whispered against her throat, "When the third mark is complete, you'll be bound to me, not just by blood, but body, soul, everything." She arched into him, breathless. "Then do it." He groaned but pulled back. "Not yet. I want the last mark to be done when there's no fear left. Only choice." She blinked. Choice. Even now, he was giving her that. And God's help her, she already knew what her answer would be. Hours later, as they exited the vault, Lucien's expression changed. He froze, hand on her back tightening. "Someone's broken the outer wards," he murmured. "Who?" He didn't answer, because in that moment, a dagger, one wrapped in cursed silver, came flying through the air. Lucien pushed Seraphina out of the way, and it buried itself in his shoulder. The attacker stood at the top of the stairs. Not Azareth, but a girl, one of the students, eyes blank, mouth sewn shut, a puppet, a warning. And across her forehead, carved in blood, was a single word, traitor. Chapter 13, The Third Mark and the Betrayer's Shadow to Love a Vampire, is to hold hands with the dark and pray it does not devour you. Excerpt from the forbidden lectures of Master Quen. Lucien didn't cry out when the cursed dagger struck him. He simply went still, every muscle in his body locking in place as if the silver rooted him to the floor. Seraphina stumbled to her feet, heart pounding wildly. "Lucien!" He gritted his teeth, grabbed the hilt of the blade and pulled it from his shoulder. The sound it made, a wet, slick tearing, made her stomach twist. The wound sizzled as if acid had been poured onto his flesh. Silver and salt, the work of old alchemists, designed to slow regeneration, especially for ancient blood like his. Lucien dropped the dagger with a hiss and staggered against the wall, blood running down his arm in thick, glistening ribbons. Seraphina barely noticed the student-turned puppet collapsing on the stairs behind them. Her eyes were only for Lucien, who was quickly growing pale, paler than she'd ever seen him. The kind of pale that came before sleep, before death. No. No, no, no. She caught him before he could fall. His body was ice cold. "Lucien, look at me." He blinked slowly, eyes heavy-lidded. "You need to run." "Not happening," she snapped. "You don't understand." "Then make me." He didn't. Couldn't. He pressed a shaking hand to the wall and murmured something in a language older than anything she knew. A glyph glowed on the stone, a circle of protection, not for him, for her. It flickered and sputtered, barely holding. "Stop," she whispered, pressing her palm to his chest, over his heart. That steady, perfect rhythm was faltering. She didn't think, she just acted. The third mark. Seraphina pulled her sleeve back and drew her own blade. A simple, enchanted silver letter opener she kept in her boot, a last-minute charm spell given by Professor Nyla for self-defense. She sliced the inside of her wrist. Lucien's eyes snapped open. "Don't, too late." She pressed the bleeding cut to his mouth. He tried to resist, but instinct, or maybe love, overrode him. His lips parted, his fangs descended, and he drank. Gods, he drank. It felt nothing like the last time. This wasn't desperation. This was claiming, binding, devouring. Heat erupted across her skin, coiling through her bones. Her spine arched as a dark, radiant power pulsed through her. Her vision swam with fire and stars. She felt her blood twist, not in pain, but in pleasure. It was like everything in her was waking up. Then, A burst of power exploded between them. Lucien's eyes glowed crimson gold as he wrenched his mouth from her wrist. The wound on his shoulder was already knitting closed. They stared at each other, and in the air between them, the third mark blazed to life. A swirling sigil appeared over her heart, unseen to others, but burning brightly in Lucien's gaze. It was the shape of a crown split in half, and a dragon's claw wrapping it closed. Lucien reached for her. This changes everything." She nodded, breathless. "I know." They retreated to Lucien's private sanctuary, a hidden chamber behind his office fireplace, accessed only through a whisper of true name magic. It was lined with velvet-draped walls, books piled to the ceiling, and a roaring hearth crackling in the dark. He laid down, shirtless, the wound mostly healed. Seraphina sat beside him, still dazed, her skin thrumming with unfamiliar energy. He watched her silently. "You gave me your blood," he said. She glanced at him. "Would you rather I let you die?" He smiled faintly. "You don't know what it means, Seraphina. I think I do." "No. Not entirely." He sat up slowly, every inch of movement graceful despite the wound. His eyes locked with hers. 3 marks means the bond is now almost complete. There is only one left, the soul binding. And after that... What? There is no going back. Not for you, not for me. You will feel what I feel. You'll dream my dreams. You'll crave as I crave. Even time will shift. A pause. And once the 4th bond is made, I won't be able to live if you die. Seraphina's breath hitched. "I didn't ask for this." "No," he said softly. "But you chose it." Another silence stretched between them, warm and dangerous. Lucien shifted closer. "Let me show you," he whispered, "what it means to truly belong to a vampire." Her pulse raced. "You already have." "No. Not like this." He leaned in slowly, his mouth brushing hers with unbearable gentleness. His fingers slid into her hair, holding her steady, as if afraid she might vanish. The kiss deepened. This time there was no restraint. His hands roamed her back, memorizing the curve of her spine, the beat of her heart beneath his touch. He kissed her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. She responded in kind, parting her lips, tangling her fingers in his dark hair, pressing her body to his as though drawn by magnetic force. Clothes slipped away. His fangs grazed her throat but didn't bite. "Not yet. I want the 4th mark to be yours to give," he whispered against her neck. "When you're ready." She pulled back just enough to look at him, and whispered, "I already am." Before either of them could move, the fire in the hearth flickered violently, turning blue, then black. A shadow stepped through it, tall, cloaked in red, unmistakably ancient. Lucien stiffened. No. The figure lifted its hood. It wasn't a man, or a vampire. It was something far older. Its eyes were endless black voids, its skin parchment thin and inked with runes from another realm. It spoke in a voice like rust and broken glass. "The binding has begun. The beast awakens. If she completes the bond, the world will bleed." Seraphina rose to her feet, heart thundering. "Who are you?" The figure looked at her with something close to pity. "The mark on your heart is not the only one. A second prophecy was hidden from the world. And you, girl, are the vessel." The figure turned to Lucien. "And you will either be her shield or her executioner." Then it vanished. The fire returned to normal. Lucien looked at her, his face carved in shadow. "We need answers," he said. "Now." Chapter 14. Bloodlines and Betrayal's Love is a battlefield where destiny bleeds and fate forgets. Unknown, carved into the obsidian gate of the Lost Archive. Seraphina didn't sleep that night. Even though Lucien insisted she rest in his sanctuary, his ancient, candlelit room beneath the college, she couldn't stop replaying the shadow figure's words. Each echo of the prophecy twisted deeper into her skin, sinking into her bones like ice water. "The mark on your heart is not the only one. A second prophecy was hidden from the world. And you, girl, are the vessel." She lay in the silk-draped bed while Lucien stood near the tall window, staring into the crimson moon that bathed the Gothic skyline of Duskmoor in bloodlight. His shirt hung loose, revealing the now fully healed wound, and the glimmering 3rd bond etched faintly above his heart. The silence between them was thick, too full. Seraphina finally sat up, dragging the blanket with her like armor. "You're too quiet," she whispered. He didn't turn. "I'm thinking. That's never good." He gave a faint, humorless smile. You've always been bold. I kissed a vampire professor in the Forbidden Archives and offered him my blood in a burning stairwell. Bold is a polite word for what I've become. Now he turned, face shadowed, golden eyes bright and unreadable. You've become more than you know. Seraphina's heart beat hard once. Tell me. Lucien moved to the edge of the bed and sat, not close, not touching, just near enough that she could feel the heat of his presence and the distance of his grief. When I took the third mark, he said slowly, I saw glimpses of your bloodline, your ancestors, things no one else was meant to see. What did you see? He closed his eyes. I saw the first bond ever made, between a human witch and the Lord of Night. I saw her sacrifice herself to seal away a great beast made of void and hunger, a creature not even death could consume. She was pregnant with a child when she vanished into the abyss. Seraphina swallowed hard. What does that have to do with me? Lucien opened his eyes again. You're her descendant, Seraphina. The child of the sealed bloodline. That mark over your heart isn't just my bond, it's a remnant of hers. Of it. The beast bound by the first witch's love is stirring again, and it's waking. Inside you. The world swayed beneath her. No. Lucien nodded once. Yes. They didn't speak again until dawn threatened the sky. Together, they left the safety of Lucien's sanctuary and walked in silence through the catacombs beneath the university, passageways long forgotten by most students. The air was thick with dust and old magic. Where are we going? Seraphina finally asked. To the Lost Archives. The only place that still holds unfiltered prophecies, Lucien said. The council locked them away centuries ago, claiming the truth would break the balance. How do you know about them? He looked at her, a ghost of memory in his eyes. Because I helped seal them. The chamber they entered was circular and carved entirely of obsidian. The walls pulsed faintly with runes that responded to Lucien's blood. As he placed his palm against a sigil on the wall, the stones shimmered, then opened like petals. Inside was a single book on a pedestal made of bone-white crystal. It was ancient, bound in what looked disturbingly like skin. Seraphina stepped forward and placed her hand on it. The book opened on its own, to a page with a single line, the vessel shall be marked by blood and bound by love. If all 4 marks are given, the devourer shall rise again, not to destroy but to choose. Beneath it was her name, her full name, Seraphina Elaris Valimir. She staggered back. That's impossible. That's not even public. Lucien's voice was a whisper behind her. The prophecy doesn't predict, it remembers. And the book turned another page. Just as Seraphina reached for the next line, a sound echoed behind them. Footsteps, metallic, sure. Lucien turned first. His hand was already on his dagger. Then the figure stepped into the torchlight, and Seraphina forgot how to breathe. He was tall. His hair was the same pale silver as hers. His skin, the exact shade of snow-kissed marble. His eyes, mirror copies of her own, and his scent. It was the scent from her dreams. The dreams where a figure always stood at the edge of the battlefield, weeping for her. The man smiled, slow and tragic. Sarah. Her heart broke. Father? Lucien froze. That's not possible. Seraphina's father, who had supposedly died in a carriage accident when she was 5, walked calmly into the chamber. I faked my death to protect you. From the council, from the prophecy, Lucien stepped between them. Or did you fake it to hide what you truly are? Her father smiled, all teeth and moonlight. Do you really want to know? And with a sound like shattering stars, he dropped his glamour. Wings, black and twisted with void, fangs longer than Lucien's, eyes that flickered with stars and oblivion. Lucien hissed and pulled Seraphina back. Voidborn, he growled. You're not her father. You're the devourer's vessel. You've been manipulating her bloodline for centuries. The creature's voice was too calm. I am what was left behind when love failed and fate intervened. Seraphina could barely speak. But, I remember you. I remember you holding me. I loved you, the creature said softly. I still do. But I was always meant to find you again, when the time was right. He extended his hand. And now, Seraphina, it's time for you to choose. Lucien moved in front of her fully, eyes burning gold, power radiating from every inch of him. She already has. The chamber shook, and the prophecy's final page turned, glowing in white fire. The vessel's love shall either save the world, or shatter it beyond repair. Chapter 15. The counsel of blood to love something cursed is to stand in defiance of every law written in blood. Ancient vampire proverb, sealed by decree in the red sanctum. Lucien stood between her and the creature that once wore her father's face, eyes glowing with a deep, primal gold, ancient power pulsing from his body like heat waves. Seraphina had never seen him like this. His control, always razor-sharp, now cracked at the seams. "You touch her," he warned, voice low and lethal, "and you'll never walk this realm again." The Voidborn, the Devourer's vessel, tilted his head with unnerving calm. "She is mine by blood, vampire. And by prophecy." But Seraphina stepped forward, past Lucien, barefoot on the obsidian floor that still pulsed from the opened prophecy book. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were like fire. "I am no one's property." The Voidborn smiled faintly. "No. You are everyone's fate." His wings unfurled slightly, not to attack but to reveal what lay beneath them, burning runes carved in a lost tongue. Each glowed with bloodlight, and each seemed to hum with Seraphina's name. Lucien reacted instantly. With a blur, he flung a dagger infused with sun-forged silver at the creature's throat. It hit, and passed right through. The image flickered, a projection, an echo. The real monster was elsewhere, but the echo's voice lingered. "The council knows. They are coming. And when they find out he marked you thrice, the law is clear. He dies." Lucien's hand clenched around the last of his weapons. A relic blade shaped like a crescent moon, but Seraphina was already moving. She placed her hand over Lucien's heart. "No one's dying for me." He looked down at her, jaw clenched. "Seraphina, I mean it," she whispered. "I won't let this world take away someone I love. Not En." Lucien froze. He'd faced wars, betrayals, Eternals who had ripped stars from the sky. But nothing terrified him like the way his heart reacted to those words. She said it. Love. And for the first time in nearly 6 centuries, Lucien felt hope. 3 hours later, they stood at the gates of the Blood Council's citadel, an ancient cathedral-like fortress carved into the side of the Blackspire Mountains. The sky was storm-dark. Lightning danced along the peaks like serpents made of fire. Seraphina wore a deep crimson cloak embroidered with silver threads, a gift from Lucien, once worn by the last mortal bonded to a high vampire. Lucien walked beside her, in full ceremonial black, high-collared, military cut, the insignia of the Nightborn Scholars etched in garnet over his chest. The guards let them in without a word. The council had been waiting. Inside, the room was circular, 12 seats arranged in a crescent, each filled with a being older than reason. There were pure-blood vampires, warlocks, one fae, and at the center a woman with hair made of gold ash and a crown of burning thorns. Lucien Virell, the High Judge. She didn't smile as she spoke. "Lucien Rain, you stand accused of violating the Eternal Bond Treaty. You have given a mortal 3 marks. Explain yourself." Lucien's voice was calm, measured. "I did not force the bond. She accepted each willingly. The 3rd was forged in a moment of necessity, during a prophetic breach. She is no ordinary mortal." "Indeed," said one of the other councilmen, a tall, shadow-cloaked vampire with ink-black eyes. "She is the bloodline of the first sacrifice. The vessel." Whispers erupted around the chamber. Virell raised her hand, silencing them. "You knew what she was, and you marked her anyway." Lucien's jaw flexed. "I marked her because I love her." Even Seraphina forgot to breathe. The council froze. Love was not a justification they expected. Virell stood slowly. "Then you are willing to die for her?" Lucien stepped forward without hesitation. Yes. Seraphina was already moving. No. She placed herself between him and the council dais. "You want to punish him for breaking laws made centuries ago to protect your bloodlines, not people. You want to control what love is allowed, what magic can exist, who can survive the end of a prophecy you no longer understand." She pulled the cloak from her shoulders and turned, showing the marks on her back and the final one over her heart, all glowing, shimmering with residual power. "You can't control what's already written in blood. I am the prophecy." Her voice cracked as she looked at Lucien. "And I choose him." The council voted. One by one, each stood and offered their verdict. 3 for Lucien's death, 4 for immediate imprisonment, 4 abstained. And then it came to Lucien Virell. She looked down at them, at the girl glowing with ancient power and the vampire who would burn for her, and she said only 2 words: trial by flame. The chambers shifted, the floor beneath them lowered like a massive elevator into a pit of fire. Above, runes activated, sealing the entire room in magic. Seraphina gripped Lucien's hand. "What is this?" He squeezed back. "A duel," he whispered. "They're going to summon something to test if I'm worthy. If I win, I live. If I fail..." She shook her head violently. "No, I won't let them take you." Flames erupted across the chamber, and from the fire, a beast made of bone and burning ash stepped into the arena, taller than any man, older than sunlight. Lucien let go of her hand. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Close your eyes." She did, and the world exploded into war. Chapter 16. Ashes of the bond to be chosen by fire is to be judged by fate. Few survive, fewer are remade. From the scrolls of the scarlet flame, the arena blazed in unnatural light, flames that licked the stone with hunger, heat that defied logic. High above, the council watched from a balcony wrapped in arcane shielding, safe from the inferno. Below them, Lucien stood motionless, black cloak fluttering like torn wings in the heated wind. The creature across from him was not born of any natural realm. It was massive, 15 feet tall, constructed from jagged bone, molten sinew and ash that constantly reformed around its body like living smoke. Its eyes burned like twin suns, and a gaping maw split its chest, showing a pulsing ruby core. Seraphina clutched the railing. Her knuckles were white. She could feel the ancientness of this thing, older than time, summoned from the depths of what the council called the original flame, a beast designed to destroy, or to deem one worthy. Lucien's voice was quiet, nearly lost to the roar of fire. "Seraphina, if I don't survive this, stop." She stepped closer to the edge. "You will. You have to." Lucien gave her a half-smile, bitter and raw. "I've lived for over 600 years. I've seen kingdoms fall, bloodlines vanish, but I've never once wanted to live forever, until you..." Seraphina pressed her hand over her heart, where his third mark pulsed faintly beneath her skin. "Then fight for me." His eyes flashed gold, and the beast roared. The battle began in an explosion of light. Lucien moved faster than the eye could track, a blur of shadows streaking around the arena, leaving trails of scorched earth where his boots touched. The beast struck with fists like meteors. One hit the wall, sending cracks through solid obsidian. Another swing cleaved the ground in 2. Lucien ducked beneath a flaming whip of bone, then countered with a burst of ancient magic. Dark vines surged up from the earth, cursed with blood and death, and wrapped around the creature's leg. It staggered. Lucien leapt. Sword drawn, forged from the fang of a fallen star, he slashed at the creature's exposed chest. The blade sank into the molten core. The beast screamed, a sound that shattered glass in the high balconies, and retaliated with a burst of heat so intense that the arena turned white. Lucien was thrown across the field. He landed hard, blood on his lip, cloak aflame. Seraphina screamed. He pushed up, coughing, the edges of his vision flickering. His power was draining, fast. "I won't leave her," he whispered to himself. "Not again." Seraphina couldn't watch anymore. Something inside her had begun to break open, not just emotionally, literally. Magic throbbed beneath her skin, old, raw, dangerous. She could feel it burning in her bones. A memory not her own whispered in her mind, "You are the vessel of fire and blood. When your bond burns, so will the world." She ripped off the remaining ties of her ceremonial robe and leapt from the balcony. Gasps erupted from the council, but she landed, somehow unburnt, at Lucien's side. He turned to her, eyes wild. "What are you doing?" "What you would do for me." She pressed her palm against his heart. Their bond pulsed, and something awoke. The third mark lit up like a starburst. Not just a symbol, but a living sigil. Magic exploded outward in a ring, and time seemed to pause for a breath. Lucien blinked. "You've activated it." Seraphina's eyes were glowing now, liquid gold rimmed in fire. "Then let's end this. Together." He stood, and they rose. 2 beings bound by fate, heart, and flame. Together, they walked into the heart of the inferno. Lucien's blade burned again, but now it was alive. Thrumming with the merged energy of her awakening and his ancient blood, Seraphina raised her hand and summoned a spear of fire, shaped from the bond between them, its shaft carved with living runes. The beast lunged. They met it in the center of the arena. Lucien went low, slicing through the beast's leg. Seraphina vaulted upward, her spear spinning once before she drove it straight into the creature's eye. A scream of finality tore through the chamber. The creature staggered. Lucien surged forward and plunged his blade into the exposed ruby core. By fire, by blood, by love. The beast shattered. Ash and molten bone scattered like dying stars. Silence fell. When the flames faded, only Lucien and Seraphina remained standing, bonded by the final proof. They had passed. The arena retracted. The council descended, silent. Lucien Virell stared long and hard at them, her burning crown flickering with hesitation. "You have broken every law," she said at last, "and rewritten them with your survival." She extended a hand, and before the entire chamber, pressed her palm over Seraphina's chest, over the third mark. "Then let this be known. The vessel of fire and blood has chosen her mate. The council recognizes the bond." She turned to Lucien. "And you, Lucien Rain, are no longer a scholar of shadows. You are now a keeper of flame, a title not given in over 1,000 years." Lucien nodded once, chin high. Seraphina turned to him, tears in her eyes, smile trembling. "You're mine," she whispered. "Forever," he answered. And then he kissed her, fully, fiercely, finally. Their magic flared in tandem, the runes across both their bodies glowing in sync. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but their story had only just begun. Chapter 17, Everburn. The heart doesn't forget the one who lit it on fire. Unknown, the archives of the marked one. 1 week later, the world outside had gone quiet. Nestled deep within the flame-bound sanctuary, hidden between dimensions and cloaked by blood magic and fire veils, the two of them finally had time to breathe. It had taken 7 days to heal. Not just the wounds from battle, but the toll of lifetimes, the ache of denial, and the weight of a bond that had once threatened to consume them both. Now, Seraphina stood barefoot in a silk shift, her long auburn hair falling in waves over her shoulders as she watched golden fireflies float lazily across the hot spring. Steam curled around her skin, blurring the edge of reality and memory. Lucien had not spoken since returning from the council chambers that morning, but she could feel him behind her now, not just because of the mark pulsing faintly across her back, but because his presence, his energy, was unmistakable, heavy and slow, like a gathering storm, and warm, like sunlight after winter. "I thought you'd be asleep," he said quietly. She turned. He had discarded the sharp regality of his professor's robes. Now he wore loose black trousers, the sleeves of his tunic rolled up to his forearms. His runes were glowing faintly, not with danger, but with something gentler. Seraphina stepped toward him. "You're avoiding me," she murmured. Lucien's jaw tightened, and he didn't deny it. "I'm trying not to ruin this," he said. "You've been through so much. You deserve peace, not me." Her brow furrowed. "Lucien, I marked you 3 times, bound you to a fate you never asked for. I became addicted to your scent, your voice, the way you say my name. I wanted you long before I knew what you were." He looked up then, gold eyes burning. "And I would have burned the world for you. That kind of love isn't safe." She moved closer, until only inches remained between them. "And yet," she whispered, "I've never felt safer than when I'm with you." He exhaled, shuddering. "Seraphina." She reached for him, fingers brushing the rune on his chest, the one that only glowed when she touched him. "I don't want peace without you," she said. "I want madness. I want storms. I want the man who would ruin everything just to keep me breathing." Lucien groaned low in his throat, and the next second, his lips were on hers. The kiss was not rushed, it was reverent. Lucien kissed her like a man who'd starved for centuries and finally found the taste of salvation. He cradled her jaw in one hand, the other gripping her waist as if she'd vanish if he let go. Seraphina arched into him, her fingers tangling in his raven-dark hair as his mouth devoured hers. Slow and deep, tongue sliding against hers in a rhythm that made her legs tremble. They stumbled back into the warmth of the sanctuary, half falling onto the cushions before the fire. Lucien looked down at her, eyes wild and gentle all at once. "I tried to resist," he whispered, "because I didn't want to break you." She smiled, breathless. then break me. If it means being yours." That snapped whatever restraint he had left. He kissed her again, slower now, more sensual. He kissed her like he was learning her, worshipping every gasp and sigh, every shiver of her skin, as his fingers slid beneath the silk of her gown and found bare heat. Seraphina moaned as his mouth moved down to her throat, teeth grazing the place where his mark already pulsed. He didn't bite, not yet. Not until she whispered, "Please, Lucien, I'm ready." His eyes glowed. With a growl, he sank his fangs into her neck and completed the mating bond. Power erupted between them, a tidal wave of light and darkness that slammed into the runes on the walls. The room lit up in gold and crimson, and the flames bent toward them, as if they too recognized the binding. Seraphina cried out, her climax crashing through her the moment their bond sealed. Lucien held her through it, breathing ragged, holding her tighter than he ever had. "I'm yours now," he said hoarsely, completely. She smiled, tears in her eyes. "And I'm yours." Later, wrapped in his arms as the firelight painted their skin in shades of gold and amber, Seraphina lay with her head on his chest. The mating bond still sang between them, alive, newly formed, electric with heat and comfort. Lucien toyed with a lock of her hair. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. She tilted her head up. "You?" He nodded. She rolled on top of him, straddling his hips, her silk robe now barely covering anything. "No," she said firmly. "You saved me. You saw me, even when I didn't see myself." Lucien reached up and cupped her face. "You made me want to live again." She leaned down and kissed him softly. Outside the sanctuary, storms brewed. The council would shift. War might come. But in this moment, this fragile, perfect moment, there was only them. Two flames, bound. Two hearts, marked. Month later, Raventhorn University. The wrought iron gates of Raventhorn University swung open under the cold glow of the moon. Ivy wrapped the ancient stone walls like living lace, and the spires of the castle still towered, majestic and ominous, as if untouched by war or time. But something in the air had changed. The wards hummed differently now, freer, less watchful, and Seraphina Elaris felt it in her bones as she stepped past the threshold, crimson robes billowing in the night wind. Behind her walked Lucien Virell, no longer just the mysterious alpha professor who'd haunted the halls of Raventhorn for centuries, but her mate, her equal, her partner. The university had weathered the chaos, the uprising against the vampire elders, the fall of the corrupted Chancellor Roth, and the exposure of the marking program. But now, it stood at the edge of something new, a future built not on fear or hidden magic, but on choice. Students filled the long banquet tables beneath flickering chandeliers and enchanted stars, whispering as Seraphina and Lucien took their place at the front. Professor Virell had been reinstated, but only after demanding that Professor Elaris be appointed to lead the Department of Forbidden Arts and Arcane Ethics. Raventhorn was changing, no longer just a school for the elite, or for those whose magic bled dark and ancient, but a refuge for outcasts, hybrids, rebels, and truth-seekers. Seraphina stepped forward, the hem of her crimson robe trailing across the black marble. "I once sat at those tables," she began, terrified, curious, marked. The room fell silent. "I thought I was just a girl with magic. That power made me dangerous. That emotion made me weak." She paused, eyes scanning the hall. "But here's what I've learned. Power without love is poison, and love without truth is a cage." She turned slightly, glancing at Lucien, who watched her with fire-soft eyes. "I was marked by my past, by my choices, by my alpha," a faint smile, "and it saved me, a hush." Then the students rose to their feet, and Raventhorn, ancient, shadowed, beautiful Raventhorn, rang with the sound of applause. As moonlight passed through the stained glass above the dais, the university's crest shimmered, a black raven rising from a thorned crown, wings spread wide, no longer a symbol of fear. Now, rebirth. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you loved it, kindly comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more amazing content. Drop a comment with your favorite moment, and I'll see you in the next one.